everyone. My name is Monica Mancuso, and I'm with St. Mary Excel. Excel is a nonprofit working here in the Morgan City and Berwick area, and we've been working for quite a little while. Our work has been focused mainly on implementing the recommendations that came out of this book. We brought some out-of-towners into our area, and they outlined a plan for us. And we've been working on it for quite a while. Contained within this book was a recommendation that we reach out for some business development funds. Because, you know, we like to think business development just happens, but sometimes you got to nurture it. And sometimes you just can't take this book and put it on the shelf and forget about it. You have to take some steps to make some things happen. So with that, we applied for a USDA Rural Development Grant, Business Development Grant. And we began this fall by offering some workshops. And you received a copy of all the workshops, the little seminars that we've been hosting. We've contracted with the CPA here in town, Mr. Tim Mott, and we contracted with the local attorney, Mr. Boudreau, to offer some strategic information on things to help grow businesses in the area. Things like, you know, right now it's getting ready for tax season, you know, just has all business owners actually stopped and considered all the things that they need to do. And also historic and cultural districts. What does that mean, and how does that, you know, impact businesses wanting to operate in this area? So we put those together, and those are available to all businesses free. And going forward now with this line of putting to practice what they recommended, from now until June, if any business owner in the Morgan City Berwick area would like a private consultation with either Mr. Boudreau or Mr. Mott, we will pay for it through this grant. So just go in, talk about your business plan, bounce it off of them, you know, get some free advice. You don't have to take it, but at least, you know, you're doing something to help grow your business. So we have some sessions, and all you have to do is complete this, get it back to me, and we'll send you over there. So the USDA grant didn't just pay for this, it also paid for us to do some more. And ULI sent us some contact information from some very talented people, and I didn't realize how big these people are until just recently. But we reached out, and they accepted our offer to come here.
My name is Kelly Boudreau, and I'm excited for today and tomorrow because I'm a business owner as well, not only a part of St. Mary Excel. My family owns G&J Lane and Marine, and we're actually going to be celebrating 60 years next year. So we've been in Morgan City for a long time. I actually live right downtown Morgan City and a big part of it. So I'm excited to see what we can do to develop the areas in Morgan City and Berwick, all around here, and also put it into action, as Ms. Monica said. That's the most important part, not just talk about the ideas, but how we can put it into action. And we have some wonderful men here that are going to be putting us, go through the workshop for Verdunity. And it's Kevin Shepard, who graduated from Texas A&M in 1994 in civil engineering. For the next 17 years, he worked for a global architectural and engineering company, HDR, in the United States and overseas. He was fortunate to return and serve as a leader in the Dallas office of the Municipal Services Department and later as a National Director of Community Planning and Urban Design Division. In 2011, using his vast experience and expertise, Mr. Shepard founded Verdunity. He writes and presents workshops on the topics of fiscally based planning, small-scale development, economic gardening, and neighborhood revitalization. Please welcome Mr. Shepard. Very impressive. And then Monte Anderson has many titles. He is a South Dallas native, developer, consultant, sales associate, new urbanist, and since 1991, president and CEO of Options Real Estate Investments. Besides the buying and selling of real estate, Options Real Estate Investments has invested, rebuilt, and created businesses in the downtown and surrounding areas. The company advocates for enhancing the quality of life of southern Dallas and northern Ellis counties and advancing its image in order to provide an enduring inheritance to our children and grandchildren. Mr. Anderson is co-founder of the Development Alliance, a nonprofit aimed at coaching small-scale housing developers and for resident-driven neighborhood development. Please welcome Mr. Monte Anderson. I know we're going to hear a lot more from them today and what they do, and we're excited to get started. Thank you.
Thank you. That's always a little awkward for us to hear kind of how we get introduced. But Monte and I have been doing these workshops in our home base of Texas, but also across the country. And it's always fun to just hear how people find us, find out about us, and then ultimately getting to come to different communities and work with you guys, hear about what is working in your places, what isn't working in your places, and really what we're here to do today and tomorrow is share a lot of the lessons learned, the best practices. You're going to get a lot of inspirational examples from Monte here in a little bit that we hope can unlock some new potential here in your community. It's worked in a lot of other places, and we have a pretty high level of confidence that we'll have some breakthroughs here with you guys as well. A little bit more about me and kind of how we got into this idea of what I'll call bottom-up planning, incremental development. As you heard, my background is a civil engineer. I used to design subdivisions and highways and all that big stuff, and I was taught coming out of school that bigger is better, growth, concrete, as long as we're growing, we're doing well. When I shifted into the planning role and was traveling around the country, something that emerged to me was no matter where I went, big city, small city, rural, urban, suburban, East Coast, West Coast, left, right, it didn't matter. Hardly anywhere had the money that they needed to fix their infrastructure. So you look around the country and you see more and more cities that their streets and their neighborhoods are starting to decline, right? And I would come back to Dallas, North Texas, where I'm based, and I'm thinking, why? What are we doing here, or what are we doing right and wrong here in my home area where we're blessed in North Texas, a great economy, growing, exploding like crazy. And I was like, what are we doing different that's going to keep us from ending up like a Shreveport, like a Memphis, like a Chicago, a lot of these other, Indianapolis, a lot of other places that I was working, Atlanta. And I started, I was just looking at that. I was like, we're not doing anything different. We're actually doing the same things, but we're doing, what do we claim in Texas? Bigger and better, right? Everything's Texas is bigger and better. We're doing the same things faster and bigger than a lot of these other communities that are now failing, right? They're shrinking, they're losing population, they're struggling to bring business in, and all of that is going to these new fast growth, more attractive areas, I guess you could say, around the country. That led me to just do some deep dive, some research, ultimately led me to leave that position and start Verdunity so that we could focus on educating about the long-term impacts of growth, the way that we build our places, where we build, how fast we build or slow we build. That has a direct relationship to the fiscal health of our cities, the ability to serve our cities over time. It also has a direct effect on the affordability, diversity, and inclusiveness of the communities that we end up with over time. So our firm has really evolved into diving into things like comprehensive plans, strategic plans, downtown plans, zoning codes, development regulations, economic development strategies, all of these different types of things that communities do as part of regular business, but getting you to think differently instead of the big growth mindset of let's go grab this new big area of town and grow into it. Let's go work with a developer to knock out 100 homes at a time, to how do we work with the locals in our communities to build and cultivate our neighborhoods and our communities over time, incrementally, one lot, one building, one block at a time. And as you see, this top line here, this is really the tagline for everything that we do. Prosperity does not come from endless new growth and horizontal expansion. It's cultivated incrementally by locals. We're going to talk today about why that's important and then how to do that. Monte, just a little more about him and how we got connected. So often I would do the planning side. I would go and do workshops and talk about why we need to change, and here's how we can do our our land use planning and our zoning planning and our economic development strategy is different. The first question I always get is, this sounds great, but how do we do it? Like, how do we do this? Can we actually do this? How does this pencil out for a city? How does it pencil out for someone that wants to develop one building at a time? Monte, and he'll talk more about his background, but he was kind of evolving at the same time and doing real estate development and then getting into this idea of how his approach fits in with cities and what they need. And so we're lucky, we're both in Dallas, we knew about each other, we got connected. So now we're able to present the why and the how kind of together. And then that all comes out in the action plan of what's a way to look at the long-term vision for your city, but do it in a more incremental, locally led way. So some of what I'm going to go through quickly here, these are things that a lot of cities around the country need to hear these things. After spending the time driving around yesterday, I don't think you guys need to hear this as much. You're not in as, this may surprise you guys, but you're not in as bad a shape as probably 90% of the cities that we work with. You're in better shape than most places because you haven't done some of the things that I'm going to talk about. Every city, you look at a strategic plan, you look at a comprehensive plan, any kind of values, strategic planning retreat from a city, and it's going to say some version of this. We want to be fiscally solvent or fiscally sustainable or fiscally responsible. We want to be environmentally sustainable and resilient. We want to be socially inclusive and diverse. But when you look at the daily decisions that they're making, when you look at the projects that they're building, the investments that they're making, they don't align with those same outcomes. So we've got this, we've got fragile economies, we've got municipal bankruptcies. I actually lived, my dad worked for Shell. So growing up, the longest I ever lived anywhere growing up was 2 years. We were constantly moving around until we landed around high school time in Houston, in the Houston area. My parents still live there today. But we lived in San Bernardino, California in the mid to late 70s. It was a best place to live, work, play. Everybody was moving there. The neighborhoods were brand new, the schools were brand new, the businesses were brand new. It was great. 2011, they filed for bankruptcy. They could not serve everything that they had built, right? Same thing in Stockton. Everybody's heard about Detroit, but there's more of these now, and there's a ton more of our cities and counties that are right on that level. They're barely getting by. You've got rising municipal debt levels and credit risk. So cities are borrowing more and more to cover basic needs. At the same time, personally, a lot more of our residents are, up to their eyeballs in debt. So that ability to spend and invest in your community is shrinking for a lot of folks. At the same time, there's also a group of folks that have more and more of that wealth that can be invested in communities, and that's some of what we're going to talk about too, is how do we use some of the wealth in our community to invest in our community to close that wealth gap. You also have this, you've got rising traffic and pedestrian fatalities. The city folks that are here, when we start to break out and dig into how do we design our neighborhoods and our streets a little differently, I can talk about this a little bit more about what our street design means and how we use street design to control some of these things. Increasing housing affordability gaps. We have growing gaps in our affordability. Every community is a little bit different in what we call affordable, what we call expensive. But across the country, there's a growing gap where we have more and more people that need housing that they can't afford, and we're in communities that aren't building that full spectrum of housing that we need. We're going to talk about that as well. So here's kind of what if I sum this up and what we see in a lot of places, we've got these fragile local economies I talked about. We've got escalating service costs, infrastructure maintenance being a big one. How do we take care of the streets in our neighborhoods, right? When your street that you live on, when it starts to fall apart, what happens? Well, let me ask you this. When your street starts to fall apart, do you feel like your city has the money to fix it? Raise your hand if you feel your city has the money to fix your street. The mayor feels confident that you some of the work, a lot of the work actually that we do, and I'm not going to get into the details of that today, but most places do not. They say they do, they think they do, but they do not. And so doing the analysis to really show what streets cost and when you're going to have to take care of them, that's an interesting exercise to go through, and it starts to help open the door to why we need to change some of what we're doing, either in building new or infill, or a combination. And then you also have disconnected residents, and disconnected can mean apathetic, can be frustrated. There's a lot of different ways but we have fewer and fewer people that are really plugged into our communities and engaged and want to invest in their place. And what that means is it's very easy for them to pick up and leave and move somebody. You know, a lot of people today will, as soon as my neighborhood falls apart or the city falls apart, I'm gone, I'll go move somewhere else. 10 years ago, there were a lot of shiny new places that people could move to. Today, there's fewer and fewer of those shiny new places to go to, and they're a lot more expensive than they used to be. And at the same time, when we go inside city halls, there's city staff, whether it's mayors, planning directors, engineers, that they know they can do better. They know we can build better places. They go and they get this training on walkable neighborhoods or complete neighborhoods or incremental development that we're going to talk about. They know that we can do better. But at the end of the day, their codes, their current policies don't allow them to do that. Again, here, it sounds like you guys have a more flexible environment that does allow you to do some of the things that we're going to talk about, which is part of what I'm excited to dig into. But for most places around the country, just to give you guys some context, our standards require, we have parking minimums. So every building that comes in, based on what the use is, you gotta have X number of parking spots, right? We tend to want the kinds of commercial development that lead to big boxes, big parking lots. And when you build the kind of pattern that requires a lot of people to drive there, it requires wider roads. It requires more roads. Roads typically, anywhere, so for one lane mile of a road can cost anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a lane mile to rebuild. Not to do kind of preventative maintenance, but to rebuild it. So think about your street, if it's 2 lanes or 3 lanes wide, that could be anywhere $2 to $3 million a mile to fix that street. Gets expensive pretty quick. So for as long as we've been doing Verdunity now, almost 11 years, 10 and a half years, asking mayors, city managers, council members across this country, when it comes to growth and development in your community, what's the biggest challenge or frustration that you're dealing with? It's this. How do we take care of the growing wants and needs of our community with the limited resources that we have? We want a rec center. We want a park. We want new downtown stuff going on. We want new roads. We want wider roads. Add a lane, add a signal. Our water's broken. We want, right? Then at the same time, don't raise my taxes. Don't charge me street fees. Don't charge me development fees. Don't make my water rates go up. So we're in this kind of environment of like our culture. We want a lot, and we expect a lot of our city leaders, but we don't always want to pay what it really costs to do those things. And so there's this tension. Nobody on a city side is going to tell their residents this, right? So I'm saying it for them, and you guys may not feel it as much as some other places do, but in a lot of communities, you have cities that there is nobody working harder than the people in our local governments. They're working 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts. They're out fixing your broken lines at 2 a.m. in the morning. They work really, really hard, and most city leaders stretch that money a lot farther than most of us even can begin to think about doing. But it's still nowhere near enough to match up with what we expect. And so what we do, and what we're going to try to do here, is close those gaps, close those resource gaps, close those income and housing gaps, close those service expectation gaps. But this is the question I was asking back in 2011, that why I started Verdunity and what inspires us to do what we do today is this: of all the growth and prosperity that we have in this country, everything that we have going right, why do our cities struggle to pay for basic services? And why do we have income gaps and poverty levels growing in this country? It's just crazy to me. I don't care if you're left or right. I sit in the middle. I believe in both. I think a lot of our country believes in both. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build a prosperous place for everyone with the resources that we have. And what we're doing across this country and across this world, for the most part, is we're building 2 kinds of communities. We're building kind of the haves that we expect a lot of things and we have the ability to pay for those things. And then we have the other part of our communities that is everyone else, which is made up of a lot of different folks at this point. Maybe they never had anything, maybe they had something and now they don't. And that group is finding it harder and harder to find quality of life and a prosperous life at what they can afford. So this is a big part of why. And if you're a reader, if you want to learn more about some of the things that I'm kind of speaking through right now, Chuck Marone's Strong Towns, they're a nonprofit group that talks a lot about this. Chuck and I met back in 2010 when I was trying to figure some of this stuff out. He and I met and have been friends for a long time. But what it all kind of boils down to is this. Post-World War II, we started this trend of land gets cheaper, all of a sudden we have the cars so we can access it easier through roads. And so we just started building hundreds and thousands in our communities over a short amount of time, which added a lot of wealth, added a lot of growth to our communities. But what about the maintenance and growth? So when a developer comes in and builds your neighborhood, here's your houses, here's your commercial development at no cost to the city. I'm gonna bring you rooftops, I'm gonna bring you a new business, right? But the city and you all, the taxpayers, are on the hook to pay for and maintain and serve that for forever. And what we haven't thought about with our development pattern is not what that development is going to bring in right up front, because every developer will show you a pro forma. Look at how much revenue I'm going to bring to your city, property tax or sales tax or both. They don't show you this street that I built, this parking lot, the water and sewer infrastructure that it takes to serve it. When you have to fix that 30 or 40 or 50 years later, where is that money going to come from? And this is why so many of our cities go upside down almost in a 5-year period. They run out of room to grow. I don't know if I have it in here or not. I don't think I do. Yeah. They run out of room to grow, so they can't build anything new and get more new revenue from that anymore. And at the same time, everything that they built in their growth phase now has to be fixed. And so you see this, they get upside down really, really quickly, and it's really hard to get out of. So again, what we're trying to do is help cities understand that path, understand that track, and how can you kind of shift what you're doing as a community with the city and developers and residents working together to be a more sustainable pattern over time. So what does this look like? What is a better, smarter way to develop so that we can align our development, what it costs to serve to develop it, with what our residents are willing and able to pay for? And it's going back to the way that we built our cities for hundreds, thousands of years. It's the historic development pattern, and it's what you all have a ton of right here, and have not done a ton of the suburban big box stuff that come to Dallas and you'll see plenty of that. If you don't know what that looks like, just come visit, we'll show you. We have a bunch. But this is how our cities grew. So this is Brainerd, Minnesota, where Chuck from Strong Towns is from, and I just love this series of slides because it's too good. I haven't found anything better than this right now. But this is how everybody started, right? You had a core square, like maybe a courthouse, a downtown Main Street, somewhere where your city started. A few people got together, said this is a place we gotta do business. You build a couple businesses or a couple buildings and businesses, and things start to go. Over time, that place grows, right? As they built wealth, they needed more buildings, they needed more businesses, they needed more housing. But there were no big loans, there were no economic development incentives, there were no tax agreements and tax rebate agreements and all that. There was not a lot of debt financing back here. We built things incrementally over time as we had the wealth to do it, personal and as a community. So that little street turns into this, right? We build it incrementally, one block, incrementally out, incrementally up, and incrementally more intense. So we would go out, when we ran out of a block, maybe we would go out another building or another block. At some point, you go too far out that starts to get too expensive. So we thicken up in the inside. We would fill in a vacant lot. Then you start to go up, you start to go vertical, and we would kind of iterate and do that over time. This is how buildings evolve. This is at Nicollet and 8th Street in Minneapolis. It's just a perfect example of incremental development over time, where you can see the different years that this building came together. right? I think 07 is the first one, but 1907, 1917, 1939, we built our buildings incrementally as well. This is from Indianapolis. This is what I was telling you about, Monte. This is my favorite street that anywhere we've ever been, that I've ever visited. But this is traditional neighborhoods that evolved over time. What do you see when you look at the street? Narrower street, right? That kind of street was very safe to walk in. It was back in the day, it was safe for horse carriages. Today, you have on-street parking, you have people, you're forced to go slow because you have to navigate around everything going on, right? What do we build in our neighborhoods today? Wider streets, right? Even when cars are parked on the side of the street, they're still wide. What does that allow us to do? Right? Who have kids? Raise your hand if you have kids. Do you let your kiddo walk or bike down your street on a regular basis? Why not? Without what?
Without us with them?
Either, but definitely. And why not?
I do, but I'm with them, and it's definitely makes me nervous instead of Second Street.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous, right?
Road moves too fast.
Right, and our streets are getting wider. We say we need to move our cars and our trucks around more, but they're less and less safe for people in walkability, and especially when we think about kids and we think about seniors. And then on the right, you look at the building design. It used to be everything was street oriented. We had the front porches, as Jane Jacobs, who is someone who writes and speaks or has written and spoken in her time about urban development and placemaking, talks about eyes on the street. We designed everything where we knew our neighbors, we knew everything that was going on, in our neighborhoods because we had eyes on the street, right? Our newer design standards are, what do? We put everything in the backyard and we fence it in, right? We all want our privacy. That creates a whole bunch of other situations where you don't always know your neighbors. You don't have that same sense of community. So I believe, my wife's a counselor. We talk all the time. I think so many problems that we have today with our kids and the way they're coming up and our risk and risk tolerance and what we're allowed to do. And I mean, every one of us, just judging here, most of us growing up, we played in the creek. We probably fell and broke an arm or bruised, did something growing up that taught us some lessons that our kids today don't have that. In a lot of cases, don't have that same opportunity. And it goes back to the way that we're designing our neighborhoods.
Can I ask, I know that y'all didn't get a chance to get out to Renwick, but that's how our kids live, in the streets, in the little canals in the back. They bring home stuff that I would prefer them not bring home. But the streets are wider, there's a bike lane, and then we also have sidewalks. So it's kind of, I love the way it was developed. I mean, I literally let my kids go and see them when the streetlights come on.
Yeah, we haven't made it out to there yet. We've talked a lot about it and want to get out there. And my sense, some of this is for context, you guys, because you haven't done a lot of these things to the extremes that some other places are. So it's more of be proud of what you have, appreciate what you have, because it's a lot easier to fix and improve what you have than to fix and improve somewhere that's got 40-foot wide streets and huge lots. But unfortunately, this kind of stuff is really hard to build in communities today because we've coded it out of it. We don't allow these things anymore because the engineers say we need wider lanes to keep our drivers safe, right? Our architects and our builders have decided we need these. Everybody wants their privacy, so we're gonna design the lots and the fences and do things that way. So we've got to unwind some of these rules that we've put in place to allow the traditional pattern to happen again. And that's a lot of what Monte and I do. Monte has found ways from the developer side to kind of hack the code a little bit and build some great things inside, what you can do by right. I do a lot of work with cities that talk about what are quick ways we can tweak or improve our code to open up these opportunities and make them a little easier. And if they're easier, they take less time to do. And if they take less time to do, they cost less, right? A lot of developers that want to do this, they spend a lot of money just fighting the process. This is what we do today, right? We build a lot of things bigger. what we think is better. And we do it kind of in a spread out pattern. So this is just, I won't go into the details of this other than to say a lot of our cities, we've built outwards so fast. And when you build out, you're taking on police, fire, water towers, water and sewer infrastructure, additional roads. And that core kind of green area for this community, Victoria, Texas, that green area was the core of their city, right? And in this case, over basically 65, 70 years, their service area grew 13 times. They extended their area by 13 times, but the population in their city only grew by 4. So the cost burden to each person, to each household in that city went up. And we're doing this all over the country. So the way we're developing is driving the cost of living up for our residents. And our residents are saying, I didn't ask for that, I didn't want that, I can't afford that. And there's that tension that we're trying to break. So how do we close this? This is very simple and these words are really small, but we can, one, increase taxes and fees, and we can charge everybody more to keep doing things the way that we're doing. Nobody likes that. We can reduce our services to align better with what people can afford, which is mostly what we're doing now. We take what revenue we have coming in and we align our services to match that. We fix as many streets as we can, we provide as many police officers as we can, but it's not anywhere near what we typically need. The third one is let's develop a little differently. Let's think about short and long term and how can we align our development pattern, the way we're building, where we're building, how we're building, in a way that aligns with what people are willing and able to afford now and in the future. Well, let me explain these. So value capture, and the reason incremental development and small development is so important. When you have, if a city, what's the most valuable resource that a city has? Land and its people. Land and its people, right? If you have land, as soon as you build something on that land, right, you're hoping to get something out of that in tax base and activity, quality of life. But whatever you build has a service cost to it also, right? So we need to think about when we build something, what is it costing us and what are we getting back in terms of value? Small development, when you build on small lots, it's a win-win. It's the most fiscally productive for a city in terms of the value that you get back out of the development. It's also the most affordable for a resident or a business owner. Just to kind of explain this, if you take, it's a 2,000 square foot home, you put this on 3 different lot sizes, okay? If it's a 3,000 square foot lot on the left, these are just some generic numbers from one of the, not generic, they're from a city that we've worked in, but if you take the property tax revenue that's generating and you divide it by the size of that lot, you get a revenue per acre of roughly around 15,000. If you go to the far right, you still take that 2,000 square foot home, but you build it on a much bigger lot, that revenue per acre goes down to a little under 7,000 per acre, right? So you're building the same size building, but you're either doing it on a small lot or a big lot. That has a direct impact into the revenue per square of tile on this floor. How much building you put on that has a direct impact to how much the city's getting out of it. At the same time, if you go vertical, the same thing happens, right? Think of a 1-story versus a 2-story home, right? If everything's the same, the street's the same, everything costs the same, the lot's exactly the same size, you do 1-story versus 2-story, it's going to be worth more and therefore more value to the city. This has held true every city that we've ever modeled, every city that we've ever worked with, 200 plus at this point. This is on the left-hand side, you see the smallest lots in the city. On the right-hand side, you see the bigger lots. So 0.2 of an acre lots are on the left, 1 acre lots and up are on the right. The blue line coming down from left to right is the revenue per acre number. The blue bars are the average value of those homes on those lots. So that one on the left, it's the smallest lots, it's the most affordable building, and it's the highest revenue per acre to the city. So win, win, Win-win-win. In a lot of places, we cannot build that. People say, why would I want a 10th acre lot? Why would I want a 2 10th acre lot? Why would I want a 700 square foot home? Everybody, Monte builds a ton of this stuff, and everybody's like, how are you gonna rent this out? Who's looking for that? Like, every time, builds it, rents up right away, right? What we see a ton of is this in the middle. We want to build that half-acre lot with a $200,000 home on it with the wider streets. It is the money pit for cities. And it's the one that a ton of builders around this country want to just crank out. That their model is built on cranking those out. It is bankrupting our cities like crazy. It's really good for a 10-year period where they're brand new and everybody wants to live there. But then they die. So the big stuff can also, that can work, but you have to have, $500,000, $1 million estates. This is a concept that a lot of people just don't get. Right, we think bigger lot, bigger home, more value to the city. We need to build a lot of that. And it can work, but again, the values have to be high. And my question is, how many people and who all really want to live in, a 2 acre lot, $1 million estate? Either want to or can afford to. We might all want to. I don't know how many of us could afford to, right? But the group of, there's a place for those folks, and we all have them and we want them. But there's a whole lot of people that are looking for other options that we're not building enough of. And again, Monte's going to get into how do you build smaller units, smaller residential and commercial units. The street design, the lot size has a direct relationship to how much the homeowner is paying for those things. I won't go through that. Now I'll show you kind of on the ground that value per acre concept, what this looks like. On the left, you see kind of just one block of a very modest kind of Main Street mixed use, old traditional pattern commercial development. You guys have this, you have a little bit of this in Morgan City. You have hopefully what we can create more of in Berwick. That little block there, 1 2-story buildings, has a property tax revenue per acre of almost $16,000. The Jack in the Box fast food restaurant that every city wants, you can put Chick-fil-A there if you want to. That's the one that everybody really wants. Same land size, same footprint. They're both roughly 3/4 of an acre, right? But that fast food restaurant is only $7,000. It's only getting $7,000 per acre. So same lot size, same services, half the value to the city. And which one of these do you think gets a lot of incentives to come to our cities? Which one of these adds to quality of life and the identity of your city?
The Main Street.
Right? So why are we building so much of the one on the right? Why do we want so much of the one on the right? Huh?
Drive up.
Drive through chicken sandwiches, usually the answer here. Let me zoom out a little bit more for you. This is kind of zoomed out a little bit broader. On the left, you see 8 blocks of a traditional grid downtown. One of these blocks is a plaza, so 0 tax revenue to the city. So you basically have 7 blocks that are generating tax revenue. That 10-acre block is getting $12,000 an acre. Several of those lots and several of those buildings are vacant in there, still getting $12,000 per acre. The big box on the right, it's almost double the land footprint, almost double the service cost in terms of infrastructure and utilities. And look at the tax revenue. It's 1/3 of the property tax revenue. Now, yes, somebody will say, what about sales tax? The big box brings sales tax. So does that little one. We've only done this in a couple of places, but when we have, the sales tax for those two comes out to typically pretty close to equal. Even in places where those businesses in the Main Street aren't, they're not what you would think of like the most vibrant, crazy, busy kind of places. It's the development pattern and having more small businesses in a more compressed place. It gives us identity, it gives us character, it's more walkable, it's also more resilient. What happens to the one on the right when Walmart decides to leave town? It's really hard to retrofit those places. This guy does it better than most. You've never renovated a whole Walmart, have you? Kmart? There you go. That is really hard to retrofit and turn into something that is, place-based, can give you identity. There's very few kind of businesses that'll go in there. Sometimes workout place, a bounce house place, think a gym, things like that, or you can take the Monte approach, which he'll show you. But what happens when one of the buildings in the environment on the left, what happens when a small business in a downtown Main Street goes out? Nothing.
Hopefully it's replaced with another.
It's a lot easier for someone else to come into that, right? You build the buildings and the framework in a way where you're creating the environment. If one tenant in that building goes out, it's a lot easier for another one to go in versus the pattern on the right. Or even think about the Jack in the Box, a Whataburger, a Taco Bell. I mean, we're even seeing some of those start to, how do you repurpose a Taco Bell and not know? You can still drive by the buildings and know that was a Dairy Queen, that was Taco Bell. But the idea is this pattern on the left, this traditional pattern, is much more resilient. It's much more affordable to get in. It's much more affordable to maintain and serve from a city perspective. And then a lot of times when we're looking at the fiscal situation of cities and how can we build and improve the financial strength of our communities, just prioritizing infill is such a big strategy. There's always, everywhere we go, we drive around, and we heard this coming here, it's very hard to find a building. It's very hard to find somewhere to build a building, build a home. There's not buildings for sale. It took us 5 minutes in Berwick this morning to find two buildings for sale, actually. They're there. They may be asking for a little more than people want to pay or whatever, but there's a lot of, there's always a lot of opportunities in the core for infill or to improve buildings or to, we really don't advise on knocking buildings down and building new ones unless you absolutely, it just doesn't make sense to save the building. But there's always opportunities to add housing, especially of the types that we're talking about and that our communities need more of in our core original parts of our city. Those also tend to be the ones that have the opportunity or create kind of that more the vibe, the identity, the character for our communities as well. And when you do this, when you do infill, this is what it does for the tax rolls. This is what it does for the financial health of your city. This is just a vacant lot in Taylor, Texas, down by Austin. They had a vacant lot, had street frontage on both sides, had full utility service, and it was just a vacant lot that had been sitting there for a while. So the city's got full service to serve that lot, but there's nothing on it. And so the revenue that the city's getting from it is peanuts, right? I mean, somebody's paying really, really low tax on that lot. You put a very simple building on it. They worked with the guy. This is actually a duplex. You can't see it because the big numbers on top of it, but it's a small duplex, added a type of housing that they needed in a neighborhood that they wanted to get a little more density to support some more walkable commercial neighborhood shops. So it filled a housing need for them. It was affordable to build. It added zero to the service cost for the city, and a revenue per acre bump of almost 9,000. So it took a vacant lot that was costing the city things and started to, number one, generate revenue, but also fill some other needs for the city as well. And you can do this over and over and over in cities. It bumps it generates more tax revenue for you, doesn't add a lot of service costs to the city. So ultimately, what that means is your city has more money to do other things in the city, whether that's fixed streets, economic development, what have you. I'm going to close with this, just kind of 5 things that I see that we encourage folks to work on in their cities to be more healthy, resilient, and inclusive. And then really the gist of this workshop is going to be to help you guys see examples of how to do this incremental development, a vacant lot, repurposing a building at different scales, for you guys here today, which is what Monte's going to cover. So the first one is create, and Monica already mentioned this, but create an actionable dynamic plan. Don't do a 500-page plan that has just a ton of words that nobody's ever going to read. Be very specific about here's the priorities, here's the values of the community, here's what we believe in, here's the assets that we want to protect, in our community. Here's the things that we aspire to achieve, and then get the big things right. What's really important to your community? and then go straight into implementation. And you guys, so far, to me, seem very action-oriented. I just been driving around with the mayor yesterday and looking at some things. You're not caught up in a bunch of bureaucratic, really big, fat plans and regulations. It's more, I think we have to connect ideas. We have to connect ideas with some of the people that own property and buildings with the resources to unlock some of this. Second one is integrating transportation and land use. If you design your land use, if you go after that big box commercial, it's going to force you to build more and wider roads. You're going to get residential development that is also bigger and more spread out, right? And the flip side is if you want more walkable, if you want more neighborhood stores, more small businesses, you've got to build everything smaller and more compact, right? So you balance the cars and the biking and the walking a little bit more. So land use, the kind of development that you get or that you want, is directly tied to the way you design your streets and your mobility network. They are very connected. And for the last 70 years, we've let the transportation lead our development, and we see what we're getting. You guys, again, you don't have that as bad as a lot of places. This is the most important one, and again, I don't think the second part here for you is really an issue with the auto-centric, car-focused element, but walkable neighborhoods, they've always been in demand, they're always gonna be in demand, and right now, the ones that are authentic, right, that have the character and have kind of been there over time and have a mix of buildings of old and new, those things, there's so much demand for those around the country, and now with COVID, people can go live and work wherever they want. Places like Morgan City and Berwick can be very attractive to people that want that kind of walkable, eclectic, kind of authentic place. And you can't build that from scratch. Developers can try, and we've seen some really quality ones done, but it's still not the same as one that has just the age and the grit of, just being built over time and has those stories. And frankly, the people that come with it. Part of a neighborhood is the people that live there. A huge part of a neighborhood is the people that live there. And when you can match up people that have lived in a neighborhood for a long time with somebody new, that information exchange, that perspective, exchange is really, really powerful. Third one, use incremental development to build local wealth and identity. We're gonna talk a lot more. This is really the one we're gonna unpack the most. And this is the last one. Cities can't do this by themselves. The city governments can't. We have to get back, we have to close that apathy gap. We've got to build this culture of collaboration is what I call it. When we go ask people on a one-on-one level, most people have time or talent or treasure, money, that they would like to contribute to their community. Most people have time, talent, and or treasure that they want to contribute to their community. They just don't know how, they don't know where, or a lot of them, they want to know if they make that investment, it's going to be appreciated, it's going to be reciprocated, that other people are going to do it too. It's not just going to be, hey, you got money, we want you to write a check for a project, and they're not asking that of anybody else, right? There's a lot of community capital in our communities that it's parked. It's like on the sidelines, right? Monte, you may use this phrase, but getting the wealth off the sidelines. Instead of investing it all in the stock market or all in your own personal company, which is very easy to do. I own my company and most of my wealth is in my company. But finding the people and giving them the reasons to invest in the community, invest in the locals that want to do this kind of development that we're talking about is a big part of making this happen. On the city side, free things up a little bit. If you have a neighborhood that wants to paint a crosswalk or wants to dig up a dead tree or wants to repaint a fence, why not let them do it or empower them to do it with a little bit of guidelines instead of just saying no? Way too often we say no from the city side, and then we don't have the resources to ever get Public Works or anybody out there to fix it, and so a year goes by and it's never fixed. 2 years go by and the light's broken out. So there are things, when we do walk shops in neighborhoods, there's always things the residents say, we could really use a trash can at this park, or this crosswalk to our elementary school is What, do you even see a crosswalk there? It's not there. It's little things that make a huge difference to quality of life in our neighborhoods. And cities are so busy, they miss a lot of that. So if we can find a way to find those ideas in our neighborhoods and then connect them a little bit better with what our city's doing and find that middle ground where we can share those resources, great things can happen. So couple things about things I would encourage you to look into more for us. They're not things that we're going to cover a lot of today, but the fiscal.verdunity.com, that shows more of the fiscal analysis and how we're using that in some different cities to explain some of this. It's also something that more developers are starting to call on us to help them make the case for a development that they think is going to benefit the community with some of these smaller lots and smaller buildings. If you're the podcast type, we have a podcast that we do, the Go Cultivate podcast. Monte's been a guest on there with me 2 or 3 or 5 times maybe. This is always a popular topic that people want to talk about more. And then the one on the right, the communitycultivators.co, that's an online network. We started it last year. We're kind of reframing and rebranding that a little bit right now, and then relaunching it later this year. But that's where we have a lot of people from communities across the country that we work with that are getting in there talking about these ideas and exchanging ideas. I'm going to just kind of pause here and ask some questions and then turn it over to Monte, and while Monte's getting set up, also would like to ask you guys to just kind of take a break and go around the room and see who we have here and how many of you are on like the city side versus the developer side. So.
For the rest of my life. And that's what I've done. I've stayed true to that. So I only do development in those areas right there. Now, over the time, I started out as a community activist first. I started out wanting a better neighborhood. And I thought, well, I can't get a good neighborhood just being an activist. I need to be a businessman. So I got my real estate license and started brokering real estate, trying to bring companies and businesses to the area. And when I brought those companies to the area, they wouldn't build anything. Nobody wanted to build anything because it wasn't good enough. There wasn't enough rental income, so I became a developer out of pure desperation. Now, over the time, I've served on the city council of Duncanville, which is a little small suburb south of Dallas. I'm also a founding member of the Incremental Development Alliance that is committed to teaching, creating 1,000 small developers around the country. I'm also a founding member of the Congress for the New Urbanism in North Texas, which is an organization that talks about building better form, building the houses and walkable neighborhoods and building more traditional neighborhoods. And so today I call myself a town maker because a real estate developer sounds, bad usually. A town builder sounds like something that's bigger. People like makers, and those are little makers. You like the candlestick and the soap maker. It sounds better. We call ourselves a town maker. So I've done things like theaters, where I hear there's an Oswald connection, Lee Harvey Oswald connection here in Morgan City to Dallas, to Oak Cliff, parts of Dallas where I live. And I've done things like the Texas Theater, I restored it. That's where Oswald was captured, after he shot President Kennedy. I've done hotels, I've done mixed use developments, old manufacturing, brand new developments, and restoring just about every kind of building that you can think of. Now, the key to doing this kind of work that I do is I like to relate it to a farmer, and that's the commitment to the territory. And just like a farmer knows the fields and he knows when the weather changes, he knows what kind of bugs and what kind of plants and weeds and stuff kind of affect the farm. See, I know that all about my community. Just like the mayor, he showed us things last night. He knows like everything, about this community. And so by living in a community and committing your life to it, you're just there all the time. You're just like the third generation property manager, and you know everything. You see a flag come up, it's different. Somebody starts to scrape a piece of land, you know the difference. You know who the best cooks are, who the best, lawyers are, all of those things. And that's what you got to know about a community to develop it. And so today there's a problem that we have with the internet and all the options in the world, especially our young people that you want to come back here. They have so many options, okay, to do things. Back when I was growing up, we had like less options of what to do. But today they got all these choices all over, and it makes it really hard to commit to something. When you can't commit to something, you're never going to be legendary. You're never going to be really good at it if you can't commit to it. And this guy wrote a book. It's called Dedicated, and I was one of the subjects in this book. And so he quoted some of the things I think about. But the point is, he studied people all over the world that had committed to something for a long period of time or for their whole life. And there was a common theme that they generally become legendary. They generally become very successful at something, not because they're great, not because we're super talented, because we just stick with something forever. We just keep sticking with it and keep moving. So if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a whole community to build or rebuild a building. And that's what you have here today. You've got city people, you've got staff people, you've got entrepreneurs, you've got some real estate people. It takes, just think about it, to rebuild a building today, we got to get a building permit, we got to get an architect, you got to have somebody occupy the building. Just think about everything it takes to do a building. You got to have the economic development directors. You know, it takes a lot of people to do, and these are some of my partners and the people that I work with on an everyday basis. And you can see there's a whole lot of banks, Mr. Banker, over here. I just hope that each bank doesn't know how much debt I have with the other bank. You know, so they'll keep loaning me money to do this. I don't hide it on my financial statement either. So in southern Dallas, this is a picture of southern Dallas County that you're looking at here. And I worked for years to try to get the city of Dallas to focus on southern Dallas and to really give us an economic development director, to give us a hub to handle all the issues that we needed. And I couldn't get them to do that. And so I got frustrated about a year ago, and I decided I was going to sell all my properties and give the money away to the homeless. I was just going to give all the money away. And then I thought, well, who could I give the money to? Because I don't trust the people doing all this. I didn't trust the city, and I didn't trust all the nonprofits that are doing this work. So I decided to take my properties, each of these areas is one of my properties, and to do my own system. And I have entrepreneurial and workforce development in one property, wealth building going in another property, housing solutions, community design studios, and an incubator going in all of my properties. And so not only am I doing the development work, I'm also teaching and training people every day. This is what we're looking at here is first the Main Street community design, and you can see all the organizations across the bottom that are involved. There's an economic development organization, there's the regional municipal planning organization, there's the Chamber of Commerce, there's the city, and of course my company. So what we decided and what we learned early on, that city councils had a hard time really visioning because of open meetings and walking quorums. We found out the city councils had a hard time really just sitting around and dreaming, just whiteboarding, dreaming, trying to decide what we want in a non-threatening environment where you can just say, where everybody's right, where nobody has to be wrong, you don't have to have any fights. And so in Duncanville, they didn't provide any vision. So the citizens, we got together around a table, and we decided that we were going to design the city. So around this table in the design studio, what we do is we get together and we decide where we want bike lanes, we want our parks to look like, what we want the art to look like, what kind of music we want in our venues, all of those things. And we decided, and we take those in little chunks. We take those to the city council, and the city council can easily approve that stuff. And they do all the time. It's been very effective. So one of the things that we wanted to do is when we were rebuilding our main street, there was no business there, so we just did a street market, simple street market. But we did it in a way where it would create form or future buildings. We pretended with the tents that we put on the street that they were buildings. So we laid them out just like we would a building. And we did it for three things. We wanted to develop entrepreneurs. We wanted to cultivate our own. We were looking for people that were coming out of their house. They wanted to sell, they were the candlestick makers, the bakers, and the crafts makers. We were looking for those people. We did it for another reason, to create activity around our main street, to create more activity around our main street, like your main street Today, in and outside of the wall of the river, you know, markets up and down there, I understand that you do a few, but you should be doing a whole lot more because it's really a perfect place to do this kind of work. And so we wanted to create activity, and then the other thing was to get people to come out and recycle, bring all that stuff out of your garages, get it out here and sell it. So it's like a big garage sale. So when we first start, people always tell me, well, Monte, we don't have any money. Like the teacher, we don't have any money. We don't know what to do, but we want to do something. So this is a little house right here you see in downtown Duncanville, and it was $40,000, and we fixed it up. We didn't add on to it. We didn't give it the gold package. It's just very clean. We just cleaned it up. The little lady that owns it now, she was a housekeeper in a hotel I owned, and I helped her start her own business. Now she has a housekeeping business, and she did live in a trailer, renting the trailer, and now she owns this house. And you can see this is from nothing, from an immigrant that couldn't speak English to owning her own house very quickly. By building her house, the teacher could actually fix this house, build it up, and then sell it to somebody else and make a little bit of profit. So as you see the house, these are very, it's clean, it's nothing tricky, but it's done very well. So this is what Duncanville Main Street looked like back in 2007 when we had parking requirements. So the parking requirements were keeping any retail from coming into Main Street. So the city council did away with all the parking requirements. They just said no more parking required on Main Street. And at the same time, we decided to do a plan. One of the plans that a company like Kevin's does is like downsizing the street and creating more sidewalks and more landscaping and those kinds of things. And you can see here in 2011 as it's evolving. So we downsized that street to 3 lanes with a slip lane. And then you can see on the left is before all the concrete, and on the right with the landscaping. And then here's just what it looks like today. And there's not one Chick-fil-A or one Starbucks there. It's all the local mom and pops. We couldn't get a coffee shop at the time. We couldn't get a Starbucks. You know, we wanted one back at the time. Today we don't even want one. But we got a donut maker to come and locate on Main Street and serve better coffee. And that's how we did it. That's how we raised the locals. So here's an old building. This was an old post office, a 1-story post office. It's 2,500 square feet. So we just ripped the roof off, built a frame inside the 4 brick walls, and then put 2 apartments on top. So this went from being $60,000 building to $650,000 without any new infrastructure. So there's 2 apartments on the top and 2 offices downstairs. This is a 1-story mixed use on Main Street. This is a 30-foot wide lot. This is what you would see in your downtown on any main street. It's got 2 retail shops in the front. One's a barber shop, one's a fruit drink place, and then 2 loft apartments in the back. They're not up and down, they're front to back. And when we built this, there wasn't enough rents. We couldn't get enough rents for a developer to build it and make any money. And so I had to look at that. I had to kind of try to figure out why was that, because what I figured out was that I could get $1,500 or $1,600 a month, no matter what, on Main Street. That's what I could get. That's the most I could get. But all the spaces were 2,000 square feet, and there were 3,000 square feet. But what I realized that most people didn't need that much space. A lot of it was storage in the back and things like that. So we downsized the spaces to 900 square feet, where I could get $20 to $22 a square foot, which made it realistic for a developer to build it financially. So we kept the money where the local market would be, but we raised the price per square foot where the developer could make money. The same thing with the apartments on the back. All we could get at that time was about 80 cents a square foot on apartments. But all the apartments were like 1,000 square feet. They were 900,000 square feet. Well, a lot of the young people only needed a little flat. They just need a little bitty space, so 450 square feet. As you can see what it looks like. It's got a refrigerator that's scaled down. It's got the stainless table there cost about $170. You know, concrete floors, and they stay rented all the time. Now they're $2 a square foot today. So what we found also in getting people to move to Duncanville is there was entrepreneurs that didn't have any money. They had a good product, they had a little restaurant, they had a barber shop, but they didn't, and they were skilled people and they didn't have any money. So we created the tri-party agreement. And this is where a banker comes in, and it could be the city or economic development corporation. So we have an entrepreneur up here that needs to borrow some money. And on this one, we're going to talk about $1 million. That would be like 2 retail units and 2 loft apartments that you might build. And you could build those all over the place here. And so the borrower, the entrepreneur, had $60,000 or a little bit of money, but needed a whole lot more. They were going to need about $300,000, okay, to do it because the appraisals weren't enough, you know, and they just didn't have that much money. So what we did was we went to the community and we found an investor in the community, a community investor. In this case, it happened to be me. I was the investor. And since then, the Economic Development Corporation has come along and done this. So the investor puts the money in the bank. The bank loans all the money. So the banker's in a really good position to make a loan here. Okay, and if the bank has to foreclose, the investor here is still protected because the investor is with the bank. And so then the entrepreneur has the money they needed, and like a 90-95%. Okay, and that's all they really needed. And not one of these that I've done have they ever gone back. Not one has ever experienced a foreclosure. So this little guy right here, the guy in the purple shirt, he's the benefactor of that. He's a 31-year-old Hispanic kid. He's got 3 barbershops, a barber school, and 2 commercial buildings now. And his mother was an immigrant. He was raised by his mother, and now he has become, and he's teaching all these kids at this barber school, he's teaching them how to build local wealth, how to build wealth from the inside out. So let's look at, Kevin showed you this price per acre. Let's look at how these little buildings perform compared to the Costco. Do y'all have Costco here? It's like Walmart, but it's better. It's actually better. But Costco was down on the freeway.
We have GJ here.
What's that?
We have GJ here.
So you have Costco down on the freeway, the big box, and you have the 2 little buildings on the main street. So here's Costco. Look at how many it's got. 16 acres. It's 150,000 square foot building. It's assessed at $8.75 million. So that's $532,000 on the tax rolls. And see this street right here? And all this, the city had to build all of this and increase the sewer and build this street for Costco, just for Costco. Not for anybody else, just for Costco. So the 2 little buildings, it's on the tax rolls for $532,000 an acre. And those 2 little buildings are on the tax rolls here for $2 million an acre and $3 million an acre. So the power of small is really huge. Okay, see, 2 of these properties gets your city rich and build local wealth. And one of them, all the money goes to somewhere else and takes all your infrastructure money. So this is a building in downtown Duncanville that I built back in 2003, and it's a mixed-use building. It's got retail on the first floor and loft apartments on the second floor. And I built this in a partnership with the Duncanville Economic Development Corporation. So they're actually my partner. So they own 30% of it. They helped put up some of the equity, and I did the financing. Back when the rents were so low, this building couldn't be built. There was no way this building could be built. And so you can see this is a loft apartment here. In fact, that's where I live, right there. I live above the cheap Chinese joint. There's a bar and there's some restaurants. And you can see here, it's got good urban form. See, it's up against the road. The building's up against the road, like your downtown buildings. And the parking's in the back. And it had 7 tenants. It had 7 occupants on the first floor. And you can see each one of them. See, there's a restaurant, 2 restaurants, and then there's 5 other tenants. And a couple of these tenants, these occupants were having trouble paying their rent. You know, they just had too much rent. And I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do to help them. Do I just need to evict them? Do I need to get new tenants? What do I do? And so this is where we started learning the power of small. That really where it started to hit home. So we took the restaurant here, see it's 1, 2, and 3. Used to be 1 spaces, now it's 3. There's a coffee shop that's 400 square feet. There's a bar and a hamburger joint that's 900 square feet. Okay, and then we divided the salon up. There was a black salon. We divided it into a Hispanic salon and a black salon. And we divided the other place up into a tattoo place and a tax place. So we created 12 tenants from 7. So let's look at this. So here's 7 tenants. Brings in $326,000 a year in rent. Okay, same building. Now we're bringing in $376,000 in rent. So we lowered the price of their rent. We lowered their dollars that they paid, but we raised the price per square foot. Okay, now this represents, and those of you that are, the banker might know this and the realtors might know it, but by increasing the rents by $50,000 a year at an 8% return, or an 8% cap rate as we call it, it increased the value of this building by $600,000 by changing the size of those tenants. And so you have that everywhere.
The other thing to add to this, besides the numbers, is perception of, a lot of times, if you see a business that starts and it goes into a bigger space and it has all the buzz, new business, and you go in and it's like half full, versus a smaller space like this that is always full. It's smaller, but it's always full. So your mind's going, man, this place is busy. People want to be here. It's a very powerful psychological thing that small but busy and small but a wait list has, versus you go too big and you have empty space.
See this bar? This is 900 square feet. It's busy on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday. Not just Friday and Saturday. So it's small, it doesn't cause parking problems in the neighborhood. A 5,000 square foot space or a 3,000 square foot space would have only been busy on Friday and Saturdays, and it would cause parking issues in the neighborhood. So it does several things when you downsize it to small. So these are just other things in the neighborhood. Here's a real estate office turned into a pet store. And not only does the pet store guy lease the building, he owns the building. We helped him, the city and me, the developer, helped them own these buildings. And there's the outreach center. This is for people that don't have any money and don't have any food. Here's where you go get your food. And we left it in. We wanted it to stay in the downtown. We wanted it to stay. Some would say, well, Monte, why'd you do that? I thought we were trying to fix up the downtown. Well, these people that need food, they're still in the downtown. And we didn't want to run them off. So here's an old post office turned into a call center. Today, if you call and order a Dallas Cowboy jersey, but you may not want to after the game they played the other night. They were throwing things at the players, when they were leaving the other night. But that's where you call Duncan, they'll take us to this call center. And there's an old church. You got, maybe this old church is now turned into a strip center. It's got a lighting store, it's got donuts, hair salon, it's got esthetician, it's got different kinds of tenants. And let's look at this church. Here's the main street. Here's a good picture of the main street. And this is this part of the building right here, and it's 2,300 square feet. And there was an office tenant that was in that building. And that office tenant was growing because, remember, we're cultivating our own. They were growing into their own corporate office. So they grew out of that building. And there's what the building looks like on the street. And this was their space. See, this is 2,300 square feet. You can see the offices, the walls. Here's taking in $2,600 as a single tenant. $2,600 a month. Okay, see the dark walls? That's the new walls we added. See, the white walls were already there. See, there's one restroom. See the one restroom? See that hall in the back? Okay, look at the new plan. Did very little work. So we divided it up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. Now, each of these spaces leases for probably like $1,000 or less a month, because the people in Duncanville can only pay $1,000 a month. They can't pay $2,000, $3,000. We have a lot that can pay $1,000. So we divided it up. Now, instead of getting $2,600 a month, we're getting $6,800 a month. Okay, $4,200 a month more times 12 months, $50,000 a year at an 8% return. We created $600,000 in value to this building. So we're making ourselves rich. What else is this doing? When the taxing authorities when they bring in they do the assessment every year, they want to look at your rent roll. because that's how they assess our taxes. What happens? This goes up in value. Here's an old Kmart that Kevin talked about that we turned into, the city, all they had to do was change the zoning from retail to manufacturing. And so now it's a tortilla factory with 200 employees instead of 3 employees selling cheap hotel furniture. You've seen those big stores, they're selling beanbag chairs or cheap hotel furniture. And they have a restaurant in front. That was a trade-off with the city. To give us the manufacturing in the back, we would have a restaurant. So you come in the restaurant, you can eat tortillas that come right off the line. So it went from a building worth about $10 a square foot to its worth, which is $1 million today, it's $25 million without having any. And then we have the parking lot to still do some things with. So this is a development that I'm doing. I start from the ground up in another little suburb just south of Dallas. And we started off with this donut store. I love donuts. It's one of my favorite foods. So I don't know if you can call it donut food, can you? So the donut maker, that I couldn't get anybody else to come even look at this. It's retail, except this donut maker. And he owned a house in another city. And I convinced him to sell his house to buy this building from me. So I could build it for him and make some profit and build another one. So he said, well, where am I going to live? So what we did was we built an apartment on the back of that donut place where a family of 4 came and lived. They bought the building, ran their donut shop, and lived behind it. And then after he built this was old school. This is the way we used to build towns. This is the way your town was built. We built 2 buildings, put a fitness place next door. And then we built 3 buildings. Okay, we built an insurance company. Now, they're all owners. They all own. So I could build these buildings. See, I didn't have the money to build them and hold them and lease them. I had to build them and sell them and make a profit. So I built just like a home builder would do. A home builder would build a house, make a profit, build another home, build a house, make another. And so now there's 3. And then here's the apartment in the back. You can see it. Then right across the street is homes, so it's all mixed. And then we built 4 buildings. A Fuzzy's Taco Shop. So now I've got a strip center. And it's owner occupants, building local wealth, raising the locals. This is about building middle class wealth, really is what this is. Because where do you get a chance? The insurance guy, he was leasing at a big shopping center. Okay, he had nothing. Well, he's a Farmers Insurance guy. He could get a loan for like 4% from Farmers Insurance at 10% down. So if I'm a small developer, I'm going to be looking for State Farm and Farmers and Allstate guys because they'll loan them money at a 10% down. I can sell them buildings. I can buy a little piece of land and sell them buildings. Now today, as you can see, I've added 3 more on. Those are 3 4-plexes. You can see there's 2 apartments up on each one of those. There's retail on the bottom, and they're only 700 square feet each. I get like $2,000 down in Midlothian for 700 square feet. And then you can see the small pharmacy was the local pharmacy. It's not Eckerd's. It was the little pharmacy downtown that was renting a space and said, hey, if you'll come out here, I can get you an SBA loan at 10% down and you can own your own building. You get a piece of the action with us. And then you can see the housing that goes around it. It would fit. Some of this fits right into your city. So this next case study is this is a 1 acre lot of a house in Duncanville. It was abandoned, had a pool, and it was like, what are we going to do with this? I'm wanting to do an experiment because here's the facts. In 1970, the people that lived in your single family homes were mom and dad, 2.3 kids. Okay, 1970, that's who owned all the real estate. Now today, by the year 2030, now 70% of the people were like that. By the year 2030, only 15% of the people are going to be like that. I mean, huge amounts of baby boomers. Women outnumber men over 60 years old because men die off earlier. You know, millennials who are not having kids. Okay, gay couples. I mean, you got lots of different things that we didn't have back in 1970. So I wanted to figure out something to do. So this is my first drawing. This is a suburban house hack, baby boomer, aging in place, roommate suites, luxury version. So what I'm gonna do is take a single family house, which you can't do multifamily, and I wanna put the modern day, and there's my numbers, there's my performance, this is what we'll do with y'all tomorrow. On some of you, we'll do some of this just exactly like this. I call it a walking pro forma. This is an entire business plan to the left, Mr. Banker, Mr. Economic Development Director. This is an entire business plan, this right here. And so we have this floor plan, this big sprawling house, and then I want to divide it up into different suites. Because I realize that I don't want to live with my dad as he gets older, but I need him close to me. So I want him to come here and live here and have his own entry, and I can live here. And he can't come in my house unless I lock the door up here or let him come in. Okay? But I got to do this by code because this is multifamily otherwise. And so what we do is we put wet bars in each of these suites. See, here's a little wet bar here. The full kitchen only goes in one suite. There are little wet bars. And see the door right here? It's a locking door, like an old hotel locking door. So it's one house. So it's different parts of the family that can live separately because we don't do good living with our family and our friends. A college student coming home to live. Okay, one of your kids, it's got a, your parent, a dysfunctional, and I got a friend that's got a son who's alcoholic and schizophrenic. He's not dangerous, but she doesn't want him living in the same house as her, but he's got to be there close. So this is what this is about. This is what it'll look like when we get through. We're just taking a simple house and adding and making it into like a mid-century modern. You can see this is just simple metal pieces added onto the house. You got houses all over you could do stuff like this with. And it really, there's the pool in the backyard and the garage, it's the carport. It's really, you can do some really amazing stuff with just a little bit of metal and changing up in the right kind of design. So this is DeSoto, this is a business incubator here. And again, see all the people involved? Again, what it takes to do a real estate deal, it takes a whole community. And so here's the problem. Here's a strip center, you've got some of these, right? You've got a mall here. I love this mall. Let me tell you, the strip centers you got that are vacant, I love those things. You probably don't, do you? You don't love the mall? Does anybody in here love the mall? Over by the Walmart? Does anybody in here love the wall besides me?
I love the potential.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't love it in its current condition.
Okay, so you're going to be the developer on the mall. You're going to be she's going to build the cottages, you're going to be the developer on the mall.
Who's got the money?
Okay.
No.
So the mayor's going to help us
I'll
round
do
up
the
the
work,
money.
you got to do money.
The bank doesn't know.
So the bank has the money. Here you go. You got the banker, the developers, okay, and then the baby boomers in the community have a lot of money in their bank accounts, and they're not using that money. They're not using that. They're going to die with that money in the bank. Okay, it's up to you to find a project that'll help them leave a legacy. Okay, because they have all the money. All the money's here. I promise you, it's here. So this is a strip center. See on a bad road, and see the red box? That's the problem. It's empty. It's the old grocery store that's empty. We were going to I bought this really cheap, and I didn't want it. I mean, I was going to put a 99-cent store in it and just dump it and sell it because I just didn't want it. And the mayor came to me of that town and said, Monty, please don't do that. All the people in the town, my constituents, are wanting me no more 99-cent store, no more. And so we got together and we worked on a plan and some ideas. And I said, well, let me ask you something, Mayor. Would you let me sell alcohol in the building? Yeah. I said, would you let me do a tattoo shop? Yeah. Would you do away with the parking requirements? Yeah. Would you let me put residential apartments on the parking lot? Yes. Would you let me park in the grass if I have a big event? Yes. Yes. Would you let me not make me not get COs, certificates of occupancy, on all these little tenants? Yes. So they gave me everything I wanted, and so this is what we did. So the first thing we did was we busted up the parking lot and put gravel and twinkly lights and trailers. Okay, and if you ever have an old project you want to just dress up real quick, just put some twinkly lights. You know, it'll go a long ways. And so then we got Beyonce here. This is Beyonce, and then we put these trailers. This is our plan for the market of what we wanted to do. And so we wanted those trailers outside to draw attention inside the big red box that nobody wanted. And then we took the box and we divided it up nearly like a flea market, like a mall. Everybody's going away from the malls, and here we're going back to the malls. So we took these spaces, see those spaces 200 to 206? Those are 400 square foot restaurants. We could lease those, we would finish them out, put all the grease traps, the vent hoods, the whole thing in, and we would lease them out for $2,000 a month to local entrepreneurs. They're fully leased today, and not one of them went out of business during COVID. And I'll show you why.
Is that the
They
one
didn't-
on Beltline?
Yeah. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
So here, and then here's the thing that you do when you're developing, when you're cultivating your community from the inside out, you're raising the community. You can't just give people space and money and not coach and mentor them. And so here we are, where there's community coaching. This is the mayor at the time, and we're teaching how to operate. So here's some of the businesses. Here's a cupcake maker. Here's a Thai restaurant. Here's a roofing company. Here's a painting class. Here's yoga. We've got all kinds of things. And here's why the kitchens made it. So we took the front of the building, which is a blank wall, and we cut these windows in. Before COVID, and these serving windows where they could serve out front. And during COVID, all these people, between Uber Eats and those windows, they made it. You could drive up, get your stuff. And in fact, they didn't just make it, they thrived. Because the big restaurants, they shut down. They shut down. So all of these people made it, and they became legendary during this time. There's my youngest entrepreneur. He was 11 years old. That's his sister. And he opened a snow cone stand. This is the kind of thing that happened. I mean, where do you get that? There's where our new people come from. There's where we're cultivating our locals. There's how you keep your people. You give them a piece of the action. You give them a piece. So here's some more. We have, African wear, and we have these spaces we divided up. We did it. See, we left the ceiling all open, just like this. If you divided this room up, see, these spaces they had some sheetrock and some artistic metal here. So I had a bunch of artists that were welders. They welded these things together, and I just let them do whatever they wanted. They create these, they're cages, if you will, or booths. And so I didn't have to change the sprinkler system, the air conditioning, the lighting, all of that. So my finish out was very inexpensive. So here's some of the offices, and they were from $250 up a square foot. And there we are at the groundbreaking. And if I would have put the ribbon cutting, if I would have put that 99-cent store in there, and I would have run the calculations based on an 8 cap, Mr. Banker, on an 8 cap, this building would have been worth $2.8 million. Okay, by doing it the way I did it here, it's worth $4.8 million. 4.8 million. And DeSoto now has a place to cultivate their own entrepreneurs. And they don't have to go out and get a $200,000 SBA loan. You can actually try it out to see if it works. We can actually try it to see if I'm an entrepreneur or not. Because there's many people that are not, but they want to try it. And this way they don't live their whole life and say, I never got to try it because I didn't have the money. So this is the way it is today. And we're currently, see this over here, these are apartments. These are one-story flats on the side of the parking lot. And so they look like this, and this is what they look like in the process. And those are approved and being built. And so this is, this property next became a self-propelling workforce entrepreneurial development, collaborating machine. There's no executive director. There's no staff. Okay, the way we built it caused people to collaborate. And here's all the people that were involved: HUD, city, Southern Dallas Development Corporation, the Texas Mezzanine Fund, my company, and the regional MPO. So, and this is a manufacturing facility where wax paper was discovered, and it had smokestack equipment on the roof. It was 500,000 pounds. We moved away, and all the developers coming to town wanted to tear it down because it was next to a train station. They wanted to tear it down and put apartments here, and the neighborhood around it just didn't want 300-400 apartments in their neighborhood. They just didn't want it. And so they fought it for years. And so I said, well, you know, I don't think we even need apartments. I think we need is business here. And so this is what we did. You can see the aerial view with the train station. And so we took, it had 2 floors. And so imagine this, imagine it in its heyday. A manufacturing facility, offices and a lunchroom and a place to work out, you know, design engineers and welders and carpenters and all the people working together. See all those little boxes? Now imagine it being 70 different companies. 70 different companies. So that's the kind of people that are here. These are some of our workforce development and entrepreneurs, entrepreneur, now entrepreneur and artist. You know, prisoner, meth dealer before, meth dealer, and another kind of, these all guys came out of bad stuff. And now they're their own entrepreneurs. There's what it looked like before and after.
Tell them about the dead raccoons.
Yeah, right here on the left-hand side, it was full of water and dead raccoons when we bought it. And today it's full of, you can see there's a co-working space. And the co-working space is one of the only co-working spaces that I know of anywhere that actually makes a profit.
If you guys ever go tour one place, because Tyler Station's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
The artists there's artists here, and here's how we did it. Here we take the whole building. We have air conditioning, and this is a warehouse looking building, and these are metal cattle panels with sliding, you know, metal doors. So the ceiling is all open, and this is where the self-propelling workforce entrepreneurial development comes in, because these people can see each other and hear each other every day working. And then the noise is there. You have a little noise, but the noise and the collaboration way outweighs what happens, because these people now are training each other. They're helping each other. They're training. That's a lot better. Your people, you can get together and train each other a lot better than I can ever help you. So there's artists, real working artists. Here's filmmakers and writers. Here's graphic designers and candlestick makers and potters. And here's manufacturers and woodworking. I mean, here's a brewery. It's actually a real beer manufacturing. And then I like to partner. One of the occupants in the building is my partner. So he's an occupant in the building, and he's also my partner. I love to partner with the tenants. So some of you that are building owners, you can do that. And this is what they say about us. This is not what I say about this. This is what people that write about us, they call it magical. And that's really what happens here. And so here's the Texas Theater.
Real quick, one thing too, before he gets off Tyler Station, he mentioned that kind of the cattle panel kind of open environment. And what it is like when you find yourself walking through there is a little noise. So anybody that like wants a quiet office space, that's not really for them. But as you're walking down, like you're literally getting to see a person make the candles and do the welding and so it's almost like it almost has a little bit of a tourism vibe to it, but you're also able to shop. It's really, I mean, there's nothing, it is like, and there are a lot of field trips that come there.
Yeah.
So my booth spaces are divided by old wooden doors that I reclaimed out of houses or MD Shannon School and stuff. But I have about 47 vendors in the store and another wait list of about 50. But part of that wait list is people wanting workspace. And I don't have any more building. I mean, we outgrew our building within 6 months.
Yeah.
But having a workspace like that would probably triple the building's income.
Yeah.
Or a lot for bigger booth spaces, bigger cells.
I mean, you might think about like another building and see which one could have the whole workshop vibe like this versus taking some.
So actually, the reason that this is not done more by bigger developers and stuff, the reason that all of these that I'm showing you today are not done, because there are a lot of leases, right? You're babysitting a lot of people. So you have to, as a commercial leasing person, like if you know of a commercial leasing agent, we're used to 5-year leases, 3-year leases, and we don't, unless they don't pay their rent, we don't deal with them. We don't hear with them. You have to have this apartment mentality as a manager here, or this booth mentality. So you're a perfect person to do another one, because you could build a management system. I mean, you're really the perfect person to do the mall or one of those places like that. So this is a Texas Theater, and what happened here was, this was built and rebuilt because there's no way the free market could rebuild this theater. So it was built with CBDG, HUD funds, Community Block Grant Development funds. It was built by a nonprofit and restored. And then what we did was we took the low debt and sold it to a filmmaker. And this filmmaker now owns it, and he runs it, and he created the Oak Cliff Film Festival. And he had such low debt that he could actually improve it to another level and create another theater on the second floor. So he took this on the second floor, and now it's very popular today. There's an old school. So you have your school over here, which by the way, is like beautiful. I went in that gym yesterday. I just about died when I went in this, because this old school here was not that good. You see, this is an old metal building, and it's got, here's the classrooms right here. See, and so I want to show you in a picture in a minute what happened to these classrooms. We created micro retail storefronts. So now see the storefront? They're everywhere. So this has got 32 units in it, 16,000 square feet, 32 units. We did this during COVID. We started in April 20 rebuilding it, and we rebuilt everything. And today, it just opened, and 31 of the 32 spaces were open when we opened it up. And the spaces were renting from as little as $500 a month and up. So see this space right here? That's 256 square feet. See, they have a door outside. This is the first floor. They have a door outside. We have food, school supplies, hair salon, tattoo, lash, school, hair braids, hair salon, esthetician, graphic design, Herbalife, all the basic, nothing tricky. There's no Gucci. There's nothing tricky here. And that space there rents for $500 a month, but that's $20-something a square foot. That's the same price per square foot that they're getting in the more affluent areas. This is in the hood. This is totally in the hood. Okay, see, here's the second floor. And these are all leased now, except for that one on the end. See, you got nail techs, art studio, barber, you got wellness, another tattoo. We have 2 tattoo places here. They're both artists. And so this is a suburban shopping center. Another one, you've got these suburban shopping centers, you've got the mall. And so this is a housing solution. See this big freeway? And you got this sprawled out shopping center. Okay, here's my problem with it. There's my problem. Mentally ill, homeless. Everywhere, do y'all have homeless people starting to show up here, or have they been here for a while, or don't really have? Got a few. It's got to get worse. It's got to get worse. And mentally ill, they smoke K2, that's synthetic marijuana. It makes you crazy. PCP. These are my ladies right here. We even advertise blunts for sale around here. Okay. So she's now housed, and she's not still. And so what happened was I tried to get the Catholic Charities to come and open up a storefront and help these people, because I'm not a social worker. So this lady here, Taylor Maja, 32-year-old master's degree from USC, social worker, and her partner found out I was trying to give away and help fund some homeless stuff, and came and moved in. And I built them a space with a shower and mailboxes, and where they could take people off the street and get them. If you have a mailbox, you can get vouchers for housing. If you have a mailbox, you can get your disability, you can get your Social Security. If you can get a shower and some clothes and food, you're not gonna break in my shopping center. So I had people breaking in my shopping center and assaulting me on a weekly basis. I mean, literally, I had assaults all the time, and they're breaking in. And so she came, and it changed everything. So here's this parking lot, this big old parking lot. That's a Chase Bank, Family Dollar, Coin Wash here, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, these big open parking lot. There's no way we ever need this much parking. There's a grocery store there. So what we did was we decided to build apartments on this and create a little bit of an urban block out of a bad shopping center, like an urban block. I already own the land. All I need is zoning from the city. So these are little bitty spaces. Now I wanted to build these spaces to house the homeless in the area and others too. I wanted to mix them. And so they look like this. This is what they look like. See, this is 200 square feet and 300 square feet. So they're little single room occupant, and they have the walls in the front. I wanted them to look good. See, I didn't want, just because they're poor and they're homeless, I didn't want them to have something less than I would live in. But, you know, I can live in this much space, and if you're poor, you can live in this much space. But we still have the same quality.
So is this where like HUD would get involved?
This is where we get vouchers, okay, through Kayla, Helen's project. And then they pay me rent. I build this without subsidy. There's no subsidy.
So I have a question.
All I need is the vouchers to pay me rent. Go ahead.
Would the city ordinances maintain the aesthetics of the properties? So what happens if it falls into disrepair and the tenants can't afford to fix it?
Well, the tenants don't fix it. I have the landlord fix it.
So the landlord would be responsible
Yes.
for the upkeep of the
All
property?
the landlord, the whole property, the landlord.
And-
So there's an association for the whole.
Well, there's not an association, but it's like any strip center. If you have a strip center in town, the landlord's responsible for keeping the parking lot clean and striped.
And then behind him, if he doesn't, that's where city ordinances fall into.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, see these walls out front? A lot of my people don't want to sleep inside, you know, except when it gets bad. And so they can sleep outside. So they can see. See, I'm not in favor of running them to the next place. I'm saying we house them. I said, we're not going to cure anybody. Oh, by the way, there's only 20-something units here. There's not 200. Because putting too many people of anything in one spot is got to be unhealthy for any city. I don't care if it's bars, homeless people, you know, dollar stores, barbershops. You know, you want things diverse. And so it actually is very. You can see the way the site plan, the way they work. They're very efficient.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
200 square feet, what do you rent for that?
It'll rent for like $600 a month, $3 a square foot.
What's the population
Of the,
of
no, this is in Dallas, in southern Dallas. This is there's 500,000 people in southern Dallas.
Can I say something about this as well?
Uh-huh.
I mean, a lot of people do not want to house homeless people, okay? But the state of Louisiana, if you do create some type of transitional house, the state of Louisiana, if you house probation and parolees for certain periods of time, they will pay you like $26 a day to house them. And I have paperwork on that. I can email
Okay.
anybody who would like that kind of information. It does need to be, you would need to create like a nonprofit deal with it, but the state of Louisiana will work with
Okay.
you to help house our population.
So there are.
'Cause that's mostly the homeless.
I mean, there's a lot of programs out there, but I don't like government
Yeah.
very well, programs. But I'll take the vouchers because there's no way a mentally ill homeless person can pay me rent. There's no way they can. In the Helen's project, the lady, Kayla, see, they stumble into her place to get a shower and a mailbox and food, and she registers them, gets them a mailbox, and if she can get them a mailbox and get registered, they can get vouchers. And if I can get the rent as a developer, I can build the building. If I can get the rent, and so I don't like to take government grants and things like that for my projects, but I will take the money, and so somebody else can live there with them too that doesn't. And so $600 a month in Dallas, Texas, you just can't find apartments anywhere anymore that are decent for that. You can't find them. And so this is what, look at the site plan today. See this is one of the worst corners in the whole southern sector for homeless. And I own the whole shopping center, this whole thing, and those parking lots, and this is what it'll look like when we get through.
Monte, I have a question.
This is-
It's kind of a rewind before we got to like the.
Okay, rewind.
But yeah, but the,
Where? Here?
The strip malls that you kind of redid, I mean, you can go back to the picture, it's fine, but is it a very trafficked area? Like, if you found, say, a building in an area that had no foot traffic or even street traffic, would you put that investment there, or would you rather it in a place where there was more car traffic.
I mean, I think it could go in both places. It's what I think we ought to do with the homeless or people that are poor is we house them in place.
Not the homeless.
Where they
I'm
are.
talking about just even.
Back to
So about when you put all the different
Yeah.
shops in
You know,
one
like you have the mall here, so, but then you also have, older buildings in the downtown area. If you have that money to invest, would you guide somebody more to go where there's LA 70 traffic or into the main street?
For this housing like this, I think it can go in either place.
Not a housing, just to like.
She's backing up to like DeSoto.
Back to-
Oh, okay, like here, you're going back here.
Yeah, well, even further.
Yeah, down in that.
The general way to
Sorry,
ask that
that was
line would
like
be when
real
you're,
gone.
when you're evaluating sites, Monte, what priority do you put on like traffic counts?
I don't put much.
There you go.
What I do is I look for opportunities where the real estate's there and there is the potential, like if I was in downtown Berwick right now, that could work in downtown Berwick. Because
reason
you
I
could
phrased the
create
question-
the vibe. You're going to create the culture, the vibe. The vibe is going to be created from the locals who are there.
Yes, the reason I phrased the question that way is the status quo, like the typical approach to economic development or development is we're going after traffic counts. Where are the corridors that have the most cars because cars bring a lot of people? That is the auto-centric, big box, big parking model. It's the exact opposite. Everything Monte's telling you is all about the place, the locals, the identity. And so, you know, where he's talking about doing this, where I'm interested in starting to do this is, and this is part of that, it's the balance of the fiscal health and growing the tax base to a community, but cultivating it from the bottom up is you're trying to make more local, walkable centric places and just do more like high quality nodes, more places around the community. And typically those are further away from your heavy auto-centric corridors.
So I've got a lot of the stuff like in Tyler Station, there is no good road frontage. They're fronting the rail station, they're inside. But the vibe comes, do you know where culture comes from? Does anybody in here know where culture comes from?
People,
From people, what kind of people?
all different.
Locals comes from people with lesser means. I mean, it comes from the two guys talking trash on the corner that turns into poetry, that turns into rap. Okay, it comes from the gritty chef. Okay, this real estate guy that's desperate to make his community better. The coffee grinder, the welder who becomes a shipbuilder. You know, that gritty, that's where culture comes from. Once we get money and we get comfortable, and typically as we get older, we get comfortable, then we're not as edgy. We're not willing to do. So that's why we cultivate the poor. I mean, we cultivate the prisoners, the poor, the minorities, women. I mean, that's where your culture comes from.
And I would add for you guys, it's the youth. There's a
The
lot of
youth is
people
less-
here. We're hearing a
less
story about.
means.
Yeah,
They have less
we're
means.
hearing stories about there's some wealth in the community of folks that have been here a long time. They're in the oil or shipping or whatever. And then there's the kids under them that maybe they're gonna have access to the wealth, but they don't yet. And there's those kids that are coming out of school and they're trying to decide, do I stay here or do I go somewhere else? That group of people, that generation is all over this. Like, you mean I could own a building? I could start a business or try something out and live in a unit behind it and like grow, try my business idea and grow my wealth. They're all about it. And like that generation is dying to find places like this that are open to that. And some of them are going to have ideas that work and some of them aren't. And that's why the small scale, giving them a place to try it out and see do they have the business chops or not.
Think about a restaurant here, though. A restaurant in some of these places to start. You know how much money you got to have to start a restaurant over here? About in a regular place. In one of my places, you can start for about $15,000. That gets you food, rent, a few pieces of equipment that you got to buy. $15,000. You can start a restaurant.
Two quick things. I have 4 kids. They all want to live here, and they all have the entrepreneurial bug. It is contagious in my family, obviously. They all want to own something. Not sure about what it is. Well, my daughter already owns her own stuff, but second question, it's not really a question. I'm going back to when you talk about the schools, because Morgan City has a school. I've been to a little mall in Waco area where you have to go up the stairs and you go through all these, but what are those, the ordinances and like, how do you get past fire codes of getting up the stairs and making this I mean, I know they're thinking of something else from Morgan City, but I'm just talking about for upstairs, what am I trying to
Well,
say?
you have to,
Renovation.
well, you have to have fire,
Right.
okay, you have to have fire sprinklers, you have to have ADA, you have to have elevators. You do, like in your school here, you gotta put in an elevator.
Right.
It's not that expensive in the scheme of things.
But you can still use the existing stairs.
See, it depends, but most generally you can. Yeah, you don't have to upgrade stairs for this kind, you might have to for some of the schools, you know, here. And then cities have their own codes too on top of the international fire codes and building codes.
Well,
But
I just
generally
think about it
speaking-
because I go to different little strip malls out of town, past Christian has one. We went up 3 different flights and there was like, I'm just using it as an example, each classroom could be
Oh, yeah.
divided
Oh, for
into
sure.
a business like Grace is looking for to expand to
No,
something
your
like
school,
that.
your
That's
school
schools to me.
with what you got,
Yeah.
what y'all are already planning, y'all were already, Mayor and Charlie were already telling me, they're already, you know, they're already thinking, y'all are already thinking about stuff to do this. I mean, it's perfect for that already. It's ready to go. This could be a collaboration village extraordinary.
Oh my God, people would drive here to go to something like
It would.
that. I went to Waco to go to something.
Yep. It would become a destination.
Instead of a housing, to me, I would feel like all of like Grace's clients, or if she's got 50 on a waiting list and she's already got 47, she could fill the whole building practically with people that can make their own. I'm just thinking.
Well, and it
about
goes beyond crafters, it goes to small businesses.
We're not talking just
We have
about.
like a small
Make her
kitchen
stuff
in
that-
my building, and he does plate lunches 4 days a week. But I
You
mean,
could do that.
the fact, I could expand on my life.
Yeah.
I could build up, like you could say,
Right,
I would
right.
love to build up. But to house multiple chefs and stuff like that, like, so whenever
big
we opened a
difference.
year ago, we had somebody who baked fresh breads. And she's moved on, she's trying to open her own bakery and stuff now. We have a guy that does plate lunches. But there's so many people around here that wanna do something like that.
Yes.
They just don't have the space or the
Like a
means
commercial
or
Right.
the commercial kitchen to do that.
Well, it's like you said, you have a variety, like say Scala wanted to put a marketing firm, he just needs a small office.
Yeah.
It would give him a space, you know, his own space, or,
And
Like
that's kind
say,
of,
first
you know,
level shop,
Jared might wanna
second
open a small
level
restaurant,
workspace,
you
third
know.
level
Food or
office.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, you could have, today's with, I mean, how many people, does anybody in here know anybody that makes a living on TikTok or Instagram, dancing or singing or anything?
I mean, I follow a bunch of them. I aspire to become.
So you need recording studios and podcast studios and photography studios and film rooms and things.
kind of, and this is part of, like, as we split out after lunch and we start workshopping a little bit, that's where kind of Monte and I will divvy up, and Tim from my team is actually back there in the back now. Tim's actually based in Shreveport, so anything we do in Louisiana, Tim wants to try to get to do it. But where we'll start to split is more of the code stuff and the kind of the conceptual plan of where could these kind of little pockets of neighborhoods go and what kind of things go together. What is the street design, parking needs, things like that go. But the code angle versus Monte's gonna wanna kind of back of the napkin pro forma some of these deals with you guys. And so when we come to that action plan tomorrow afternoon, it's gonna be a sketched out concept plan of, like, here's something we could do for Sheehan Elementary, here's what we could do for Front Street, or, you know, trying to get a little bit of definition of, like, here's how some of these different ideas could fit together to create a little place, or maybe some ideas for your side as well. And what I wanna start to kind of get a feel for is on the city side of things of how comfortable
Tell them to keep talking.
is your environment, you know, it just, your codes, like, how much of your codes will allow this to happen? Because we want to make.
I'd like to answer that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
From my experience. I sit on the city council now, but I retired from the fire department. So for 10 years, I was assistant chief in fire prevention, right? So the question that Colin had, how does a code, or how does the problem versus the school, if you try to open business, right? There's a couple things with that. One, it depends on the business that you're trying to open.
Right.
Right, so there's 9 sections in our fire code that as cities and the state we must follow. So if I'm gonna open up a school, okay, that's gonna be a section in the fire code to what they have to follow. If it's a business, it's gonna be quite different. It has to do with exits, the number of exits, the travel distance to the exit, the square footage of the building. So it might be very easy to do, depending on the building, right? So
See-
if look at the local fire department. In Morgan City, we're lucky to have a bureau. The other communities don't, right? So they might not have answered that. So that would be the answer to the state fire marshal's office. You can always call there and actually talk to an architect.
So, oh, go ahead, keep
No,
going.
sir.
Okay, so, remember I said a minute ago, what'd I say? It takes a village to raise a child, it takes a whole community. So when we're value engineering,
I had another thought. And
okay,
just
go
what
ahead.
You said about development. After I got in the office, I used to try to work with the chamber all the time. And the city, and I heard the economic developer here, there was always a disconnect. So someone would come to the fire department wanting to open a restaurant. So my question would be, do you have the money for a hood system? And they would say, well, what's a hood system? Well, you're not gonna open up a restaurant. The hood system is about $1,000 to $1,200 per
$3,000.
foot. So
Three-
they had no education, right?
Yeah.
They knew they wanted to cook, they knew they could cook, but they didn't have the education or the training, as you talked about, to be able to develop that.
Yeah. So if we
Another
were,
issue that I saw, which is Lee's niece, right, the one that opened up a business, she has a baby that's doing well. But 15 years ago, there was a couple that come to the fire department and they wanted to do it on Front Street. But there is some business people in town, nothing against it, it's their business. But they always wanted to hold on to their wealth.
Oh, my God.
And
I tried for a year
it's
and a half to
probably-
get a building on Front Street.
I'm sure that's like this in a lot of communities. They want to hold on to it. They don't want to sell it. They don't want to lease it. They don't want to give it away. They'd rather die with it.
yeah,
And I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I worked with another banker before I retired, and he was gonna try to invest in a small business in the downtown area.
yeah.
So I approached the owner and I said, the local banker wants to fit a business in there, and I think we got a tenant for it, why don't you sell it at a fair market value? And he said, I would rather die with it, or leave it to my children and let them fight over it.
No.
And I was just like,
Well-
oh, no. That's true.
But weren't there vacant buildings?
So this ain't me you talking about, but.
Right, so you
So-
you have a local banker that's willing to live with entrepreneurs' needs, right? And I was working, not as the mayor or as a councilman, but as a fire chief, just to try to facilitate and help him with the codes and get him in. And he was like, I'd rather die with it than
Yeah.
just let my kids fight over it, and it's frustrating.
Well, sometimes,
So, and I mean, it's not
Okay.
your problem, but that's something.
no, it is, it's a problem, this is a problem in every
In
city.
every community.
Every city, and sometimes only death will solve some problem.
That's not true. That is totally
Sometimes.
wrong. That's what everybody thinks. and it's
Break them
wrong.
alone.
People with wealth bought these properties or inherited them, probably mostly inherited. And they're still stuck in the day of when this was the heyday. So they believe that that building is worth $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year, but now it only bears $1,000 a month or $12,000 per year.
Correct.
So when you go to the new thought pattern of, let's divide it in half and charge 1,000 for each side because the person really don't need it and they can afford it, they're back to $2,000 a month, right?
Right.
And if that was presented in the right way to those same people everybody's talking about, because some of them are my friends, okay? And then they would say, it's well worth it for me to do it now. But to them to do it for half price, me too, okay? I'll do it for free for her, all right? But to do it for half price, is it worth that person's, the liability on that person? All right, to take a chance of getting sued, or somebody get hurt or something, for half the money? To them, no, I don't care. I'm gonna leave it there and I'm gonna pay tax on it and I'll deal with it later. I'm telling you what he thinks, okay?
Oh, I understand.
So I love what he's talking about, because if you divide it up and you say, hey, Joe Blow, you can make $3,000 a month instead of $1,000 a month on the same building. All right, per square foot. I mean, this is a numbers game, period, case closed. Nobody cares if you like it, you don't like it, if you're sympathetic, you're not sympathetic, it's a numbers game.
So let's,
When people
so
are
let
putting money into it.
let me keep going. We're gonna have lots of time to talk this afternoon, and for sure. Because there's a number of ways to cut this stuff up. There's partnerships. You know, you could say, look, we got a chef who wants to go in your building. If you'll give him 25% of the deal, he'll pay you a higher rent, or she'll pay you a higher rent. You can cut it up. Then we got to figure out how to finance it. We got to figure out how to value engineer it. I mean, one of the things that you can do easily at a city was when somebody comes in, you bring the fire marshal in, and you bring the inspector in, you bring the economic development or whoever in together, and you have a round table about their sketch, about what they're thinking. And that's one way. I mean, you want to do some really good economic development, have your front desk person at the city be nice, and look for solutions, and look for reasonable solutions. And the fire marshal can change his tune, right, if he can be proven by a fire engineer or an engineer that what they're doing is reasonable, or they'll stamp it. Okay, so sometimes you can use an outside. We're gonna move quickly here, because we're gonna be here all day, all this afternoon and all day tomorrow. So we got lots of time to talk. But let's just look at this quickly. We'll look at these slides here. We're going to spend about another 15 minutes. You can see what this will look like, what this changes in Dallas. This changes from a property worth about, I bought it for about $2.5 million. It's worth about $7 million now. Now it's going to be worth $12 million. Without adding any land, without adding any roads, without adding any infrastructure. So this is what it'll look like when you drive in, instead of a big ugly parking lot. And again, I wasn't trying to cure the homeless, because I know I can't do that. All I'm trying to do is be a little more humane. Just house them and give them food and clothing. And by doing that, I don't have to fix broken windows. So here's what it looks like. Here's some more about what it looks like. Now here's an interesting thing. This was the first, this is an unsubsidized homeless housing, what I call a roommate house. Okay, and this is my sketch from back in 2017. If you see this is a 2-bedroom shotgun. You see the 2 bedrooms in the living and the kitchen and the bath. Okay, and then all I did was add on 2 rooms to the back. And here was my problem. This was in a place where there's 90% poverty, 75% unemployment. And this was a community development corporation was trying to look for housing solutions. What they were doing is they were taking $20,000 houses and they were slapping some lipstick on the pig. You know, putting some paint on it and a window unit, and it was still trash. So you live in trash, you're going to be trash. You know, you're not going to get out of the cycle of poverty. You're not going to get out of it. And I said, you can't do that. We need not 20,000 to add to this. We need 150,000 to add to it. How do you make the numbers work? This is how. So this is a roommate house. What we found out was the people coming out of shelters could afford $250 a month. And this could be a middle class roommate house. This could be an upper class roommate house. This one happens to be on the lower end. So they needed places for $250 a month. So we added those 2 rooms on. And here's how the numbers worked. So the numbers work like this. There's my original pro forma. This is what we'll again do tomorrow. So here's the house. We put $143,000 in. This is in 2017. Today it would be $200,000. Okay, the payments, because we're getting rich people to give to this organization and not give away loan money at low interest. 2% interest. Taxes were $250. Insurance is $150. The total payment on this house is $927. We're going to sell this house and these 2 units to an ex-homeless person. Somebody who used to be homeless 5 years ago. He's been clean and sober for 5 years. Nearly all the homeless people have a drug or alcohol. He's been clean and sober for 5 years. We're going to sell it to him with strings attached. Because you can't just give it to somebody and expect them to be a landlord. And they're going to lease the 2 units for $500, $250 a piece. The payments he pays is $427 a month to own a house. And this is what it looks like. Here's the plan. Here's the 2 bedrooms, you see it, it's a shotgun, you've seen them, you got them all over. There's the 2 roommate units. By putting the door in here and the door in here, it's not multifamily in our territory. You can't do multifamily. So that we lock the doors. Each of the units has its own entry, has its own wet bar, and its own bathroom. And each of the units can come out the back door and they can go in the laundry room once a week with a code and do their laundry. And this is what it looks like today. And there's the 2 roommate units on the back. It's simple, I call it simple elegance. There's what the inside looks like.
You did that by right without any zoning change?
We did this by right without any zoning change or without any subsidy. And the homeless guys were living in hotels, cheap hotels, $100 a week, and then living on the street a week. And then living in a hotel a week, $100. And they couldn't, and if you lost your child through CPS, how many people have lost their kids? They can't, if you're in a group home or a shelter, you can't get your child. You can't see your child. So there's lots of, this solved lots of problems. So here's the number one point I want to leave you with right now. Besides the commitment to your community to build, you to become a builder and you to become a developer. Besides that, and to commit to your community for the rest of your life. Because once you commit to your community for the rest of your life or a place, it changes the laws of the universe around you. Okay, I would rather be lucky than good any day. I would rather be lucky than good. And I've been very lucky. I'm not that good. Somebody said not too long ago, they said, Monte, sure it's taking y'all a long time to do this project. I said, yeah, we're slow and we're not very good, so it's nearly impossible to do what we do. So this is the point here is today you may be on the bottom of the ocean. Okay? Right now. You're down here on the bottom of the ocean. And you want to go to the moon, but you're trying to figure out how to build a rocket ship. While you're on the bottom of the ocean. Okay, you're not smart enough to build a rocket ship yet. You haven't taken the proper steps to build a rocket ship. So what happens? You work on building the rocket ship for 2 or 3 years, and then you give up and you quit. And you become bitter and resentful. And many people try to do businesses or build bigger projects that they can't build because they have no momentum, because they haven't built their money up. This is how you start from zero. You buy a house, you fix it, you live in it, you rent out a room, you sell it, you buy another one, you have a little more money. Okay, that's how you do this. You learn how to raise money from wealthy people in town. You learn how to you make plans, make business, make good plans that are sound plans, okay, of how you do this. So by the time, and this is a proven fact, that your brain actually expands if you have a purpose in mind, going to the moon. Okay, you have a purpose. I'm going to rebuild my community the best I can by building housing, cottage housing. That's going to be my purpose. And I'm going to live here for the rest of my life doing that purpose. And so you're by the time you get your face mask and your flippers, okay, and you learn to swim, by the time you take those steps when you've got a purpose in mind, in the back of your mind, your brain actually expands. Your brain actually really expands. They're proven, you can go on TED Talks and stuff, and you can Google some people that talk about brains. By the time you get to the beach, okay, you're not the same person you were here. By the time you build one cottage, then you need to build 5 cottages at once. You will be a different person. Okay, that you can do this then. And so all you have to do is take one step. Today, all you have to do for you, and I don't know the rest of you yet, but is decide you're going to do it. That's the first step. Because, if we leave here today, if Kevin and I leave here today or tomorrow, and there's not somebody here that has been inspired to build something, to rebuild something, to do them all, then we have failed. Because we don't want to come here and give you some drawings and some talk at you for a little while, and then it just goes nowhere. This is a thing that you do, and you're going to be able to teach each other then. We also we will leave behind a 12-step program with 12 steps to town making, okay, that you can actually do yourselves. The people that are interested in doing this work can meet. It's like a self-help group. It's just like a 12-step program. Anybody that's been to one? Okay. How many people have been to 12-step groups in here? I have bunches of different things I need them for. Anyway, but but you're supporting each other. You sit around and there's a system you go through and you talk about, you help each other and you learn from each other. And that's where the collaboration, you talk about the collaboration. I mean, I'm guessing here right now, when I see the spirit of Morgan City in the boat, the first thing I saw when I pulled through town, when Kevin and I were trying, I saw the spirit of Morgan City in that boat over there. And I thought, man, we didn't know what we were getting into. And then we meet the mayor and Charlie, and then start meeting with Monica and her people. I mean, we start saying, this is a special place. I mean, this is really a cool little place, because you haven't been destroyed by bad suburbanism and building ugly things, and you're kind of landlocked, in this square miles, and there's a lot of land to develop here. There's a lot of land left to develop in that 5 square miles. I was telling the mayor this last night. South Beach, Florida, okay, is 1.5 square miles with 50,000 people in it. You got 5 square miles, right? Something like 5.4 square miles. And you got 50,000 people in 1.5 square miles. And it's nearly all 2-story. That's not high buildings. You don't even have to build a tall building here. You can build all cottages, whether they be. So you got some really special, the DNA here, what we see with the river and what we see with the spirit of Morgan City. Maybe it's gone away. Maybe you want it back like it was. It won't be like it was. It's got to be the new spirit, Councilman. It's got to be. And so you've got something really special to work with. I'm telling you, I promise you do. And I'm in South Bend. Kevin's in Kansas City, in Atlanta, in Buffalo, in Tucson, South Tucson, and South Dallas. Killeen, Texas, Albion, Michigan, Battle Creek, Michigan. Detroit. We're all over the place, talking about this same thing. There's a spirit here that I think sets in that boat on the median out there that you guys have to figure out how to get your collaboration together. We create the environments where it's natural collaboration, and you will be able to solve your problems without any outsiders, without any outside consultants or anything. Maybe you just need help come to town once in a while to help, because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, right? Because you're in the forest, and you don't. So sometimes you just need it. I even need that in my own neighborhood. Somebody to come once in a while and go, "Hey, Monte, we think you're doing a really good job," because I don't feel like I am. I feel like I'm doing a really bad job a lot of the time. And I feel like my cities suck, that I live. I want to move somewhere else, But anyway, that's you could do that. You can really do that. This small of a group of people right here can make a huge change. All you have to do is I'm going to be disappointed if you don't build a cottage. That isn't any pressure. No. And I say to people that are baby boomers, that say to this, live like you're going to work forever. Live like you're going to die today, and work like you're going to live forever. So if we were 20 years old again, okay, what would we be thinking like? That's what I want you to think like. So you want to, why not? Why not? Why shouldn't we just be, we should go out. So go out the same way we came in. We should just, instead of sitting back watching Jerry Springer, that's what I'd be doing, watching Jerry Springer on TV if I didn't work. But this afternoon we're going to dig deep into like specific problems, and we'll talk about fire and your entrepreneurs and anybody that wants to try to do a project. Something you got a project you want to run some pro formas on. That kind of thing. You want to kind of look at some design. The school, I know you're planning to do some other things around that. That's such an exciting deal right in the middle of town that really could have a ripple effect. And this works like a flywheel sometimes. You just get one little thing going here. It's just one little cottage, one little snow cone stand. And then you get another thing going, and it works like a flywheel on a car. You know how a flywheel works? You get it going, or the snowball rolling down the hill. It's hard at first to roll, and all you need is little successes. You need those little successes, and then it just gets rolling fast. Yes, and then you got to control the gentrification. And what I call what you're doing is gentrification. And that's where you keep a lid on it. And you make it where the locals get the wealth. So this is really about building the middle-class wealth back, right? Our middle-class wealth is going away. And unless you start building those cottages and you don't do that mall, you know, you got a lot of pressure. I'm putting a lot of pressure on you right now. Because that's where the middle-class wealth has to be for this country to be great. You have to have that. We can't have no middle-class wealth. We will be a country in the, you know, we're like we're becoming right now. I mean, that's what we're becoming, is a country that doesn't have wealth in the middle class. Just very few have it. But so we got this afternoon, right? We're going to take a lunch break. We're right. Are we on time? We're right on time.
Yep.
We're going to take a lunch break.
Yep.
We're going to be back here at what time? 1 o'clock.
Yep. So while you take your lunch break, maybe you're gonna think about somebody that should be here that's not here. So if you don't mind, during your lunch break, give somebody a call and say, you really need to be here this afternoon, and invite them to come. We still have room. Also, we're letting you out a little bit before 12 in case you're picking something up at the restaurants, because sometimes they get full. But we will start back at 1 o'clock, and we invite you all back, or bring someone, or call someone that has to work all day but has lunch off, and they can come in because they're going to be doing a working lunch. They will stay here and they will meet with anybody that wants to come by on their lunch period.
Yeah, pretty much from here through lunchtime tomorrow is going to be kind of come and go, just one-on-one conversations or group conversations that we're just trying to capture ideas, a little more about concerns and challenges. And I mean, if you want to run pro formas on an idea with Monte, if you want to kind of site plan an area or something like that, Tim and I can help with some of that. But kind of from here on, it's just going to be making sure we capture ideas with you guys. We'll have some kind of hands-on sessions, rotate through groups as we need to. Potentially, usually tomorrow, depending on if we have a bunch more people come up and that's going all the way through today and we feel like we need to do more workshopping in here tomorrow, we can do that. Sometimes if we capture those ideas, tomorrow morning could become we actually go out and go look at if there's 3 or 4 people that want us to look at a site, boots on the ground, and talk about it, we can go do that as well. So we kind of just want to be flexible from here to the end, and at the same time, if the best use of our time here is doing more workshop and boots on the ground kind of stuff, we can do that, and we can get the action plan, we can do that from when we get home too. So we just want to use our time here all the way through tonight. Tomorrow is, use and abuse us is what I always like to say. So take advantage of us, ask us questions, get pro formas. Bank guys, if you have questions on how to do loans on this, city guys, if you have ideas or questions on how to make the code more ink dev friendly, ask us. We've probably heard it from somewhere, and we've probably done it somewhere before. So use this as much as you can from here until we roll out. So if you can, just put your index cards in a pile on your tables, and I'll come grab those, and then we'll see everybody back here at 1 o'clock.
You said use 2 sides, right?